The U.S. Department of Homeland Security, led by Secretary Kristi Noem, revoked Harvard University's SEVP certification, a drastic move barring the Ivy League institution from enrolling new international students. Nearly 6,800 current foreign students from over 140 countries, comprising 27% of Harvard's enrollment, must transfer to other certified schools or lose their legal status. Noem, in a letter posted on X, accused Harvard of fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party, citing the university's partial compliance with demands for foreign students' disciplinary and protest records. Harvard, contributing $44 billion annually to the U.S. economy via international students, denounced the ban as unlawful and retaliatory, vowing legal action. The move, following $2.7 billion in federal funding cuts, could reshape U.S. higher education, with Noem hinting at targeting other universities like Columbia. China's foreign ministry responded swiftly on May 23rd, with spokesperson Mao Ning condemning the ban at a Beijing press briefing. Educational cooperation between China and the U.S. is mutually beneficial, she said. This approach from the United States will only damage its image and credibility. China will firmly safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of overseas Chinese students and scholars.
Educational cooperation between China and the United States is mutually beneficial. China has always opposed the politicization of educational cooperation. This approach from the United States will only damage the image and international credibility of the United States. China will firmly safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of overseas Chinese students and scholars.
With Chinese nationals forming the largest group of Harvard's 1,203 international students in 2024, the ban sparked outrage on Chinese social media, with CCTV questioning the U.S. as a top study destination. Some in China, per the New York Times, saw it as a blow to one of America's last admired institutions, while Hong Kong University of Science and Technology offered unconditional admissions to affected students. Fangzhou Jiang, a Chinese Harvard student, expressed shock in San Francisco. Harvard has represented the epitome of higher education globally, the academic freedom and meritocracy second to none. He described the truly magical experience of Harvard Square, now marred by uncertainty.
It's a great environment there, definitely very inspiring. I think the moment you step on Harvard Square, it's truly magical, right? Like that experience, that moment is very unforgettable. I just couldn't believe it because I thought the administration at Harvard had been like back and forth for the last couple of months, right, on various issues and pulling funding and stuff, which is already very painful for Harvard. But I thought that was the maximum pressure that the administration was able to put on Harvard. I mean, like as a member of the Harvard community, people are very, proud of, Harvard being able to stand firm, right, compared to Columbia, for instance, which already kind of caved to the requests. So basically, it's a mixture of like shock, then to kind of just devastation, like frustration, and then uncertainty, anxiety. It's a combination of all of those feelings, I would say, among students in the community right now.
I thought the maximum pressure was funding cuts, but today reset people's belief in how far the administration could go, Jiang said, reflecting campus devastation.
I think the Trump administration knows very well, what international students mean to the U.S., right? Especially, these folks are legal, I guess non-immigrants here. They contribute, more than $40 billion a year in economic benefit, right? And then they kind of really feel the talent pool of the US, right? Especially in AI, in many other critical sectors. So I don't think that the administration is ignorant of that. The stakes are too high, right? Like you don't want to just show the moral support and then kind of deal with like 10,000 people or many more, because it impacts people who are working as well on OPT and all of that. So you're dealing with tens of thousands of people, and then the consequences. So I'm hoping that this thing will stop at Harvard and hopefully kind of resolve amicably, as opposed to kind of like spreading all over the Ivy League or all of the top institutions in the country.
Zhang Kai-chi, a public health master's student, shared his anguish in Boston. I was sad and irritated. I thought it was fake news, but it came from DHS and the New York Times.
When I heard this news, I was sad and irritated. In fact, for a moment I thought it was fake news, but it came from the Department of Homeland Security, and the New York Times also published it.
He cancelled a flight to China, losing an internship and research plans.
Because of this, I immediately canceled the ticket back to China, which made me very sad. I have a lot of arrangements after my return, and I have an internship at the domestic branch of the Clinton Health Access Initiative. At the same time, I am also a Chinese medicine apprentice, and I will continue to study Chinese medicine when I go back. I have a lot of academic and personal arrangements for my return, including a research project for which I need to collect data. I need to go back to collect it. There are a lot of arrangements for my return. Now I have been forced to rearrange a lot of things, and I have suffered a lot of loss in my academic and personal gains.
At Harvard, Chinese students' voices are almost not heard. It is what it is, Zhang added, highlighting feelings of neglect and oppression.
Others are relatively relaxed. They feel like even if we're anxious, we can't do much, because at Harvard and in the US, the voices of Chinese students have been almost not heard, and we've always been a neglected group. Neither the school nor the government paid much attention to us. Sometimes they deliberately suppress us. So some of our students are like, so be it. What can we do, right? It is what it is. Chinese students at Harvard and in the United States are in a state of vulnerability, neglect, bullying, and oppression. It's true that many U.S. policies specifically target Chinese students and impose some restrictions on them, including stricter scrutiny or oppression due to ideological issues.
Analyst Steve Tsang, director of the SOAS China Institute, warned on May 23rd that the ban threatens Harvard's existence.
The Trump administration's imposition of a ban on Harvard accepting and keeping overseas students is absolutely enormous attack, both on Harvard and on academic independence and integrity. In terms of the institution, Harvard is a university of something like a bit over 20,000 students, I think 22,000 or so. And about 6,000 to 7,000 of them are overseas students. It means nearly a third of Harvard's students would suddenly face the question of whether they would be able to stay on at Harvard. And of course, the impact on Harvard's finance would be pretty devastating.
What Harvard is facing is nearly existential, he said. I cannot see any other option but for Harvard to fight back and challenge it in the courts.
Well, what Harvard is facing is nearly existential. And therefore, I cannot see any other option but for Harvard to fight back and challenge it in the courts, and potentially asking for an injunction to stop the order from the administration, at least until the case has been heard and ruled by the US courts system. The alternative is to completely cave in which case it really would have very salutary effect on the entire US higher education sector, and it would also cause universities in other democracies to be very concerned. If something like that can happen in the United States, then we can no longer be complacent to think that oh, it just can't happen to us.
Conversely, Jay Green of the Heritage Foundation argued the ban's legality, stating, "Foreign student visas are a privilege, not an entitlement. The Trump administration wants to remove students who've supported terrorist organizations like Hamas."
So I don't believe it's illegal. Foreign student visas are a privilege, not an entitlement. In particular, students cannot enter the United States if they provide support for designated terrorist organizations. They wouldn't be allowed to enter the United States. The Trump administration wants to remove students who've provided support to designated terrorist organizations like Hamas, and they want to be able to know which students have done that. So they want access to disciplinary records and to videos of protests.
Green suggested Harvard's litigation is strategic. The federal government is bigger and richer. Harvard is positioning for a better deal.
I think the Trump administration is demonstrating that they're going to prevail in this fight with Harvard. I know that people think Harvard has over $50 billion in endowment and they're, have this status and this history. That's all true, but the federal government is bigger and richer and will prevail here in this fight. And I think Harvard understands that. And really all that they're doing is positioning for a better deal. And so the litigation that Harvard has been pursuing is just to try to get a better agreement with the administration. And I suspect that's ultimately where we're going to end up. There will be an agreement between Harvard and the Trump administration, and it will be a reasonable deal that will allow Harvard to move forward and offer a quality education. So none of this is catastrophic. It is just a fight for positioning for a better deal for each side.
As a federal judge's recent injunction against similar visa actions fuels hope for legal recourse, the ban's ripple effects threaten global academic ties.